The morning began with a noise that made my stomach churn a low guttural groan, then a snapping crack and a thunderous boom that rattled the earth. It wasn't a shot or an explosion, it was worse. Something powerful and ancient had collapsed. I sprinted out of my boots, barely scraping the porch steps, and through a cloud of ascending dust I saw it. My 80-year-old oak, the center of my ranch, stretched across the wreckage of my best tractor like a dead giant, and standing over the devastation by her side with arms crossed and a snarl curving her smirking lips was Linda, the HOA tyrant, her giant sun hat shadowing her self-satisfied smile. She was as pleased as if she'd pruned a rose garden, not cut down a tree on my property. I didn't say anything, not because I was shocked, but because the words seething in my mouth could have stuck me in handcuffs. The morning had started so peacefully, sun-shining coffee steaming. My only intentions to inspect the fence and lubricate the loader arms on my Massey Ferguson, out here just out of the range of town sirens, but close enough for good internet. Quiet mornings were sacred. I should have recognized it was too quiet, like the calm before a predator pounces. Linda had been circling my life for years, a vulture in khaki capri, always sniffing for something to dominate. She'd never been fond of my ranch, although it was beyond her HOA's reach. That hadn't inhibited her from posting flyers on my mailbox complaining about the unsightly paint on my barn, or phoning animal control because my goats were making too much noise at dawn. 2 weeks before she'd stormed over, clutching a clipboard, complaining that my oak was sloping drunkenly towards her precious community, I indicated the metal post gutting my property line and explained, "My tree, my land, your rules in there." She'd stormed off taking pictures with her phone. That was the first warning. Then came the yellow notice stapled to my fence. Not my gate, my fencey. A typo-ridden notice telling me to take away the aggressive tree in 48 hours or risk community action. I laughed. I showed it to my neighbor Tom, and we both thought she was bluffing. We were wrong. When the crash came, I ran outside, grease still smudged on my hands from morning work. The oak was huge, its roots older than Linda's whole subdivision now lying across my gravel lot. My tractor lifeline for hauling feed, plowing dirt and digging ditches was a mangled heap. The roll bar was twisted, the seat flattened, the loader arms snapped like kindling. Linda stood there tilting her head as if admiring her work and said, "You're welcome." I stared jaw-twitching and asked what she thought she was doing, honoring my responsibility to community security. She responded stating that she had hired a crew since the tree was unsafe. She brushed aside my inquiry of whose property it belonged to, saying it grew too far in one direction to be safe. So it was fair game. I explained to her the fence was 8 feet from the base of the tree. She scorned me. I took out my phone and began recording. She didn't blink even as she conceded hiring the kuno allow. No name, just a shrug, like regulations were for other people. When I spoke of the thousands in loss, she sneered, "Perhaps now you'll remove the other trees too." I continued to record until she waddled to her golf cart and left. The tree wasn't merely wood. It shaded my goats, marked the seasons, and disposed of my compost pile every autumn. The tractor wasn't merely metal, it was my living. Linda hadn't merely crossed a line, she'd cut through my whole operation. I called the sheriff, and a deputy just old enough to shave came out. He watched my tape but sighed when I brought up the HOA, calling it a civil issue I pushed. How was trespassing and vandalism not criminal? He took notes, said he'd follow up, and left. I knew no one would call. The next morning, the air was filled with sawdust and rage. As I drank coffee, a white SUV with an HOA logo stopped. Linda stepped out, clipboard in hand, taking pictures of the stump as if she were checking a pothole. I asked if she was there to apologize or brag. "Recording compliance," she said, as if burning down my property was procedure. She said that the tree was breaking some indefinite community protection rule and faulted me for not taking care of it. I reminded her it wasn't hers. She shrugged. Boundaries are flexible when safety's in question. I again videotaped her, catching each word of her conceit. That afternoon I took the sheriff's office with my evidence videos. Pictures that mimic notice. A sergeant sat through it, shook his head, but told me it would probably remain civil unless something was injured. I asked what would have been done if I'd hacked a tree into her garage. He didn't say anything, but told me to make a report and call a lawyer. So I did. I called Mike Carter, a retired property attorney, an old fishing buddy, over brisket and beer. He smiled at the wreckage and said, "She screwed up big." We examined my survey, confirmed the boundary, and he explained it. Timber trespass. Destruction of property, unlawful entry. State law could triple the tree's value plus damages for the tractor. Mike instructed me to document everything, every email, text, and note Linda sent. Days later, I saw workers hammering fence posts onto my property off of Linda's rough draft. I didn't allow them to finish. I snapped some photos. Mike laughed when he reviewed them, labeling it a lawsuit jackpot. The HOA newsletter even contained a photo of my tree that was circled in red, as if proving her crime justified. But her scheme turned around on her neighbors, hushed over her overstepping. A few at the pet store spoke up for me, saying they'd viewed my video on the internet and called her conduct disgraceful. I uploaded a 30-second drone video stump wreck. Tractor crooked fence with a caption, "When your neighbor believes rules don't apply." It went viral, racking up shares and comments such as "shameful" and "is this even legal?" Linda began to crack, her strut became stiff, her lawn became patchy, and her newsletter disappeared. The HOA board wrote a letter disavowing her actions, vowing to investigate. A neighbor, Ellen, brought cookies and stated Linda had bullied people for years over little things like lawn ornaments. I sent a cease and desist letter through Mike's office, requesting the removal of the fence damages and apology. We sent copies to Linda, the HOA, and county code enforcement. I contracted a drone pilot for aerial video recording. The fence cutting into my property. The video went viral, picked up by a local blog with the title, "HOA Oversteps Boundaries." Literally. Comments ran rampant, people posting their own Linda stories. At an HOA meeting, Mike represented our case survey video results, Linda's own newsletter. She stammered regarding safety, but collapsed on being asked to produce a permit. The board suspended her outright. A new letter came in owning up the error at the boundary and saying they would pull down the fence. Mike answered, 7 days plus written apology or the lawsuit advances. Linda issued a claim of defamation on my video, instilling emotional distress. Mike termed it a tantrum and sued in return for damages, attorney fees, and punitive cost, $18,700. In court, Linda's confidence melted away. The judge, an old-school kind, wasn't swayed by her motives. Mike's evidence surveys footage, timelines was watertight. The claim of defamation was dismissed, and Linda was told to pay the whole sum in 30 days or go hungry. She stood stunned, her queenly disguise shattered. Outside, Mike clapped my back just as tastes like rubbish coffee. The next morning, I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, looking at the bare stump. A delivery truck showed up with a catalog for my new tractor. Top of the line, nicknamed Linda Smasher Neighbors, blew their horn in solidarity. The whole town was buzzing. I left one fence post with a sign. Private property trespassers filmed and got fined, chagrined. It became a legend around town. Posted online, Linda's yard erupted. Her associates disappeared and her newsletter was replaced by a Kinder voice. Then late one night she showed up in a black car, worn out, visorless. She apologized softly, pledged the payoff, and drove off. My check came, and so did my tractor. Shining like victory, I constructed a bench from the oaks, remains, its frame modeled like roots with a sign, "Let the roots remember." It was a landmark christened the Story Seat. New neighbors Sam and Lisa purchased Linda's house, promising respect for boundaries. At a fall festival, I gave a talk on property rights, sharing my experience without mentioning Linda. A plaque near the bench read to those who stand their ground. As I sat there one evening, cider in hand, the land felt whole again. Linda was gone, her house empty. But the roots of this place, law, truth, resilience, held firm.